Ikenna was born in a small town near Enugu, where the red dust covered everything and life moved slowly. His house was a small mud building with a tin roof that rattled whenever it rained. He lived there with his mother, Mama Adiz, a strong woman with kind eyes and tired hands. Every morning, she would tie her wrapper tightly around her waist, balance a basin of gari on her head, and walk to the market. She sold from sunrise to sunset just to make sure Ikenna could go to school. Even as a little boy, Ikenna was curious about how things worked. When other children played football or chased goats, he sat near old radios and broken fans, opening them up just to see the wires and metal inside. His mother often laughed and said, "My son will either fix the world or scatter it completely." He would grin and say, "Mama, I will fix it." In primary school, Ikenna was quiet but clever. His teachers liked him because he listened carefully and always asked questions that made them think. He could fix chalkboards, repair old wall clocks, and even mend school radios when they broke. Some teachers started calling him Engineer Ikenna, and the name stuck. His best friends, Tund and Amara, often teased him about his obsession with machines. One day, Tund said, "You will marry a computer instead of a woman." Amara would laugh and add, "He will name his first child Laptop." After school, Ikenna often walked to a small cyber cafe at the corner of the town. The cafe was owned by an older man called Mr. Obinna, who saw Ikenna's interest and allowed him to help clean and maintain the computers. In return, Mr. Obinna taught him how to use the keyboard, print documents, and even browse the internet. The first time Ikenna saw a web page load on the screen, he felt like he had discovered another world. The flashing lights, the colors, and the endless information made his heart beat faster. From that day, he knew his future would be tied to computers. At home, Mama Adiz didn't understand much about what her son was doing, but she trusted him. She saw how his eyes sparkled whenever he talked about computers, and she would smile and say, "Follow your dream, my son. Just don't forget where you come from." Sometimes, when she came home late and tired, she would find Ikenna sitting near a small kerosene lamp, reading about technology from old newspapers and borrowed books. She would shake her head proudly and whisper a prayer for his success. Life, however, was not easy. Their roof leaked when it rained, and there were nights when they had no food except boiled yam and palm oil. Ikenna hated to see his mother suffer. He promised himself that one day he would buy her a big house where she would never have to work in the market again. Every time he walked past rich men in their shining cars, he thought, "I will be like them, but in a good way. I will make money with my brain." In secondary school, Ikenna became known for fixing phones and old laptops. Students brought their gadgets to him, and even teachers began to seek his help. He never charged much, just enough to buy a little food or pay for internet time at the cafe. His reputation grew beyond the school, and people from other neighborhoods came to find the boy who could make dead phones wake up. But behind his smile, Ikenna carried a quiet sadness. He saw his mother's hands grow rough and her back bend from years of work. Some days, when sales were poor at the market, she would come home with nothing. She would hide her tears, but Ikenna always knew. On such nights he would take her hand and say softly, "Mama, one day all this will end. You will rest, I promise." His friends Tund and Amara were his biggest supporters. Tund was cheerful but careless, always dreaming of quick wealth. He often said, "Ikenna, you are wasting time with these small computer things. Let's find where the real money is." Amara, on the other hand, was calm and wise. She admired Ikenna's patience and believed in his dream. "Don't listen to Tund," she would tell him. "Your time will come. Just keep working." Sometimes the three of them sat under the old mango tree near the river, talking about the future. Tund wanted to travel to Lagos and become a businessman. Amara dreamed of becoming a teacher. Ikenna wanted to start a computer shop, one that would teach children how to use technology to build a better life. His eyes always lit up when he spoke of it. "One day," he said, "I will have a big training center with many computers, and people from all over Nigeria will come to learn." His friends laughed, but deep inside, they believed him. When Ikenna completed secondary school, his results were excellent. He got admission to study computer science at the university. The news spread around town, and neighbors came to congratulate his mother. Everyone was proud. Mama Adiz danced in the street that day, her heart full of joy. But the happiness was short-lived. University fees were high, and she had no money saved. She sold her jewelry, borrowed from friends, and even sold her old stall at the market just to send Ikenna to school. At university, Ikenna faced a new world. There were modern computers, fast internet, and students from different parts of the country. He worked hard, studying both day and night. He also took small repair jobs to earn extra money. Many nights, he skipped meals just to buy data for research. His dream of helping others kept him going. Whenever he felt tired, he would remember his mother's smile and whisper to himself, "For Mama." During holidays, he returned home to visit her. He always brought small gifts, sometimes a new wrapper, sometimes foodstuff. They would sit outside under the moonlight, talking about life. Mama Adiz would listen proudly as her son spoke about computers and the world of technology. Though she didn't understand much, she loved to hear him talk. Years passed, and Ikenna grew into a confident young man. People in the community respected him for his discipline and intelligence. Some said he would become the pride of the town. But even with all the praise, Ikenna stayed humble. He never forgot where he came from or the sacrifices his mother made for him. He still dreamed big, but he was patient. He believed that success was a journey, not a race. Little did he know that life was about to test that belief. That year, just before his final exams, his mother fell ill. The doctors said she was weak from years of stress and needed rest. Ikenna felt helpless. He sat by her bed, holding her hand, whispering promises. "You will see the good days, Mama," he said. "You will see the computer shop I'll build." She smiled faintly, touched his face, and said, "I know you will make me proud, my son." That night, as he watched her sleep, he felt both fear and determination. He knew the road ahead would be hard, but he also knew he could not turn back. The dream that started in a dusty town, with a boy opening broken radios, had grown into something much bigger. And as the moonlight shone through the window, Ikenna whispered the same words he had spoken as a child, words that guided his heart every day. "I will fix it." After finishing university, Ikenna came back home full of hope. He carried his certificate proudly, believing that it was the key to a better life. His mother, Mama Adiz, was overjoyed to see her son graduate. She told everyone in the market, "My Ikenna is now a university man." Her smile made Ikenna's heart warm, but deep down, he worried about what would come next. He started applying for jobs immediately. Every morning, he dressed neatly, carried his brown folder with certificates, and went from one office to another. He wrote application letters, sent emails, and even traveled to nearby towns in search of opportunities. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, with no reply. Each time he received a letter, it was always the same message: "We are sorry, but the position has been filled." The struggle became harder. Mama Adiz's small business was not doing well. Her health had weakened, and she could no longer go to the market every day. Some nights, they shared a single meal, and other nights they went to bed hungry. Ikenna watched his mother cough quietly and look away so he wouldn't see her pain. He wanted to help, but there was no job, no money, and no hope in sight. Then one hot afternoon, as he sat outside their house, lost in thought, a shiny black car stopped in front of him. The door opened, and a familiar voice called, "Ikenna, my G." It was Tund, his old friend from school. Ikenna was shocked. Tund looked completely different. He wore a gold chain, designer clothes, and sunglasses. The scent of expensive perfume filled the air. "Tund, is this really you?" Ikenna asked, still surprised. Tund laughed and hugged him tightly. "My brother, you look the same. But why are you sitting here like an old man? Don't tell me you're still searching for work." Ikenna smiled weakly. "My brother, it's not easy. I've been trying, but there are no jobs anywhere." Tund shook his head and leaned against his car. "You're too smart to be broke, my guy. The world has changed. Nobody waits for the government anymore. You have to make your own way." Ikenna frowned. "How?" Tund grinned and lowered his voice. "There are other ways to make money, my friend. Big money. Fast money." At first, Ikenna didn't understand. But later, as they talked more, Tund explained what he meant. He told Ikenna about internet hustling, what people called wire. He showed him screenshots of bank alerts, expensive phones, and pictures of vacations abroad. He said all it took was skill and confidence. "It's not stealing, bro," Tund said quickly when he saw the look on Ikenna's face. "It's just smart business. Those people abroad are rich, they won't even feel it." Ikenna's heart pounded. He had heard stories about such things before, how people tricked others online to send money. He never imagined his friend was part of it. "Tund," he said quietly, "you know this is wrong. My mother raised me better." Tund smiled. "Right and wrong are just words when you're poor. You think your mother would prefer you sitting here hungry or living well? Come on, my guy. You're too sharp to suffer." That night, Ikenna couldn't sleep. His mind was full of questions. He thought about his mother coughing softly in the next room, about the unpaid bills, about the broken roof that leaked whenever it rained. He tried to pray, but no words came out. His heart felt heavy. The next day, Tund visited again, this time with a new phone. "Bro, take this," he said. "Use it to learn. I'll show you the basics." Ikenna hesitated, but he took the phone. He told himself it didn't mean he would join, he was just curious. Days passed, and curiosity grew stronger. He began to watch as Tund worked on his laptop, chatting with strangers from other countries, pretending to be someone else. Ikenna was shocked at how easily people believed the lies. "See, it's all about packaging," Tund said proudly. "If you sound right, they will trust you." At first, Ikenna only watched. But one evening, Tund asked him to try. "Just one chat," he said. "If you don't like it, walk away." Ikenna hesitated again, but he needed money badly. He thought of his mother, who had not taken her medicine for 2 days because they couldn't afford it. He sat in front of the laptop, his hands shaking, and started typing. The first message felt like fire in his chest. He felt guilty but also afraid, and strangely powerful. When he saw the first payment come through, he couldn't believe it. The money looked unreal, just numbers on a screen, yet it could change everything. He stared at it for a long time, his heart pounding. "It's just this once," he whispered to himself. "Just this once to help Mama." But it didn't stop there. In the days that followed, Ikenna continued learning from Tund. He became more skilled, creating fake profiles and stories. Each success made him feel a mix of guilt and relief. He started buying food, paying bills, and fixing the roof. Mama Adiz was happy again. She thought her son had found a good job in town. "I'm proud of you, my son," she said one evening, smiling weakly. "I knew you would make it." Those words pierced his heart. He forced a smile and replied, "Thank you, Mama. It's just the beginning." But inside, his conscience screamed. He knew what he was doing was wrong. Every night, when he tried to sleep, the faces of the people he deceived haunted him. Sometimes he heard voices in his head saying, "You're not that kind of man." He tried to stop, but each time he did, another problem appeared: rent, hospital bills, food. And every time, Tund would say, "Don't worry, bro. It's just the hustle. You'll get used to it." Slowly, Ikenna began to change. The humble, gentle boy who once dreamed of building a computer school now wore fancy clothes and spoke with pride. People in the town started calling him Boss Ikenna. He was the man with the latest phone and a confident smile. Only Amara noticed the difference in his eyes. One evening, she met him on the road and said softly, "Ikenna, what are you doing these days?" He laughed. "Business, my dear. Big business." She looked at him sadly. "I hope it's honest business." For a moment, his smile faded. He wanted to tell her the truth, but fear stopped him. "Of course it is," he said quickly, walking away. That night, as he sat before his laptop, he saw a message from another victim, a woman begging for her money back. She said her husband had just lost his job. Ikenna froze. He read the message again and again until tears filled his eyes. For the first time, he saw himself in her pain. He shut the laptop and sat in silence. Outside, the town was quiet. The moonlight touched his face as he whispered, "What have I become?" But the next morning, when his mother asked for her medicine and he saw the empty cupboard, the guilt disappeared again. He turned on the laptop, sighed deeply, and said to himself, "Just one more time." He didn't know then that each one more time was pulling him deeper into a world that would soon test everything he believed in. Money began to change everything for Ikenna. The small room he once shared with his mother became too small for him. The old walls that had witnessed his childhood dreams were replaced by marble floors and bright lights. Within a year, he moved into a large house on the outskirts of Enugu, a place people whispered about whenever they passed by. The gates were tall and shiny, the compound wide and filled with cars that glimmered under the sun. People started calling him the Wire Lord. His transformation was shocking. The same boy who once walked to the cafe barefoot now wore designer shoes that cost more than some people's yearly rent. He began to dress in fine clothes, Italian suits, gold watches, and dark sunglasses that made him look untouchable. When he walked into a place, people stared. He carried himself with the confidence of a king. Everyone wanted to be his friend. For Mama Adiz, it was like a dream. Her son now brought home baskets of food, fine wrappers, and even built her a new house. She no longer went to the market, she spent her days resting in comfort. When people asked how her son made so much money, she smiled proudly and said, "He works with computers." She didn't know the full story, but she was grateful to God for blessing her child. Ikenna also began to give out money in the neighborhood. He paid school fees for some children and donated money to the church. The pastor called him a young man favored by God. People in the town praised him, saying he was a good example of success. But behind all the praise, there were whispers. Some said his wealth came too quickly, that no honest man could rise so fast. Others called him a genius who had outsmarted the world. At first, Ikenna laughed at the rumors. He felt powerful, almost invincible. The more money he made, the bolder he became. He bought a new car for Tund and opened a small shop for his mother. At night, he sat in front of his laptop, moving large sums of money with a few clicks. It was as if the internet itself obeyed him. But not everyone was happy. Amara, his old friend, watched the change in him with heavy eyes. One afternoon, she visited him in his new mansion. She looked around at the fine furniture, the sparkling chandelier, and the expensive decorations. Ikenna greeted her warmly, but she could see that his smile was different. It was sharp, practiced, and empty. "Ikenna," she said gently, "you've changed." He laughed. "Change is good, Amara. Look at me now. I made it." She shook her head. "No, you lost something too. You used to talk about helping people, building a computer center for children. Now, all you talk about is money." He looked away, a little irritated. "You don't understand. I worked hard for this. I deserve it." Amara sighed. "I just hope the way you got it won't destroy you one day." Her words stayed in his mind long after she left, but he pushed them away. He told himself that people only criticized what they couldn't have. As his fame grew, so did his pride. He began to host big parties every weekend. Musicians, politicians, and businessmen came to his house. Drinks flowed like water, and laughter filled the air. Tund, who had introduced him to the game, was now his closest friend and partner. Together, they built a small network of people who worked under them. Money came from all directions: foreign accounts, fake business deals, romance scams. Sometimes, Ikenna sat back and wondered how far he had come. He remembered the hungry nights, the prayers, the dreams of honest success. But those thoughts no longer moved him. "The world is unfair," he told himself. "If you wait too long, you'll die poor." He began to travel, visiting Abuja, Lagos, and even Ghana. Each trip added more money to his accounts. He was living the life he once dreamed of, but without peace. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw faces, people he had lied to, people who had lost money because of him. To forget, he partied more, bought more, and laughed louder. His mother noticed the change in his behavior. One evening she asked, "My son, are you happy?" He smiled quickly. "Of course, Mama. Why do you ask?" She looked into his eyes. "Because I see joy around you, but not inside you." He didn't answer. He just kissed her forehead and went out. Deep down, he knew she was right. Tund, on the other hand, was living even wilder. He bought more cars and dated women who only cared about his money. He started taking unnecessary risks online, bigger scams, bolder tricks. Ikenna tried to warn him. "Be careful, my brother. Don't draw attention." But Tund laughed. "You worry too much. We own the game now." Still, something inside Ikenna felt uneasy. He noticed strange things, unknown messages in his inbox, random calls that went silent when he picked up. He ignored them, believing no one could catch him. Months passed, and his wealth reached new heights. Newspapers began writing stories about him, calling him the young tech millionaire. He was invited to speak at youth events and business conferences. People clapped and cheered when he talked about digital opportunities, not knowing the truth behind his success. One day, as he stood on a stage, looking at hundreds of people clapping for him, he suddenly felt hollow. He realized that he was teaching lies. He had everything: money, fame, comfort, but inside, he was still the same boy who once dreamed of fixing things, not breaking them. That night, Amara called him. "Ikenna," she said softly, "I saw you on TV. You looked proud, but your eyes looked tired." He stayed silent for a long time before replying, "I don't know who I am anymore." She said, "It's never too late to find yourself again." But he laughed bitterly. "Too late, Amara. I'm in too deep." He hung up before she could say more. The days that followed were strange. Small things started to go wrong: accounts that didn't balance, partners who suddenly stopped answering calls, and whispers that some people had been caught by the authorities. Tund brushed it off, saying, "It's just noise." But Ikenna's heart began to race every time he heard sirens. He tried to calm himself by buying more things: another car, another house, another chain, but none of it filled the growing emptiness inside him. Sometimes, when he stood in front of his mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. He told himself that he could quit soon, that he would leave everything behind and start a real business. But every time he tried to stop, another deal came, another chance to make easy money. It was a trap he couldn't escape. One evening, as he looked out from his balcony, watching the sunset over the city, he whispered to himself, "I have it all, but I have nothing." The wind blew gently, carrying the faint sound of music from a distant party. For the first time, the title Wire Wire Lord felt heavy on his shoulders. He wanted peace, but peace no longer knew where to find him. The morning started like any other. The sun rose gently over the rooftops, and the sound of birds filled the air. Ikenna woke up in his large house, stretching lazily as the cool air from the air conditioner brushed his skin. He looked around at his room: marble floors, golden curtains, and a wardrobe full of fine clothes. He smiled to himself, thinking how far he had come. Today, he planned to meet Tund for another big deal, one that promised to bring in even more money. He went downstairs and greeted his mother, who was now living with him. She was sitting in the living room, watching a gospel program on TV. "Good morning, Mama," he said cheerfully. She smiled. "Good morning, my son. Don't forget to pray." He nodded absent-mindedly. "I'll pray later," he said, picking up his phone. But he never got the chance. A few minutes later, the peaceful morning turned into chaos. Loud knocks hit the gate, hard and urgent. Before his security guard could react, several men in black uniforms burst into the compound. They carried weapons and shouted, "Police! Everyone stay where you are." Ikenna froze. For a second, he thought it was a mistake. He looked out the window and saw their jackets with the word EFCC printed in bold red letters. His heart started to race. He dropped his phone, his hands trembling. "Mama, go inside," he whispered. The officers stormed in, shouting his name. "Ikenna Obi, you are under arrest for cybercrime and internet fraud." His mother cried out in confusion. "No. My son is a good boy. There must be a mistake." But it wasn't a mistake. Within minutes, they were inside the house, turning everything upside down, searching drawers, opening safes, taking laptops, documents, and phones. Ikenna stood helpless, watching his world fall apart. His cars, his house, his clothes, everything that once made him proud, suddenly felt meaningless. As they handcuffed him and led him outside, neighbors gathered to watch. Some whispered in shock, others shook their heads. A few even took pictures with their phones. The same people who once praised him were now calling him names. "Ah, so this is how he made the money," one man said. I knew it couldn't be clean, another woman added. Ikenna kept his head down. Shame burned his face. He glanced once at his mother, who was crying uncontrollably. "Mama, I'm sorry," he said softly as the officers pushed him into the waiting van. At the station, everything felt like a bad dream. He sat in a small, dirty cell with rusty bars and a concrete floor. The smell of sweat and despair filled the air. He leaned against the wall, trying to understand how everything had gone wrong so fast. Just yesterday, he was at the top of the world. Today, he was nothing. Hours passed slowly. His mind replayed every moment. The first time Tund introduced him to Wire, the first lie he told, the first dollar he took. He realized that each small step had led him to this moment. The truth hit him hard. He had built his life on a lie. The next day, he met the man who betrayed him. It was Kunnel, one of his close friends in the business. Ikenna stared at him through the bars as the officers led him past. "Kunnel," he said in disbelief. Kunnel looked away, guilt on his face. "I had no choice," he muttered. "They caught me first. They said they'd let me go if I gave them your name." Ikenna's heart sank. "So this is what friendship means?" he asked quietly. Kunnel said nothing. The officers pushed him away, and Ikenna was left alone again. Days turned into weeks. Each day, he sat in that cold cell, staring at the ceiling. The food was terrible, the nights were long, and the noise of other prisoners kept him awake. But what hurt the most was knowing that his mother had fallen sick from the shock. He heard from a guard that she fainted when she saw his face on the news. The newspapers called him the Wire Lord caught at last. They printed his photos, his house, his cars, all of it. The fame he once enjoyed turned into shame. People he helped avoided him. Those who once praised him now mocked him. One night, as he sat in the dark corner of his cell, he began to cry quietly. The tears came not from fear but from regret. He remembered the small boy who once fixed broken radios, the young man who dreamed of teaching others, and the promise he made to his mother, to build an honest life. Somewhere along the way, he had lost himself. He began to pray again, for the first time in years. "God, I know I failed," he whispered. "I took the wrong path. I wanted to help my mother, but I hurt so many people. Please, give me one more chance to make it right." His voice broke as he prayed, but for the first time, his heart felt lighter. He knew that no amount of money could buy peace or freedom. Days later, a lawyer came to see him. "You've been charged," the lawyer said. "But there's hope if you cooperate." Ikenna nodded silently. He didn't argue or try to defend himself. He was tired of lies. When the time came to stand before the judge, he told the truth about everything, how it started, who was involved, and how greed had destroyed him. The courtroom was silent as he spoke. Even the judge looked at him with pity. His mother sat at the back of the room, weak but present. When their eyes met, she smiled faintly through her tears. It was not a smile of pride but of forgiveness. Ikenna was sentenced to several years in prison. When the gavel fell, he closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, God, for another chance." Prison life was hard. The walls were rough, the beds uncomfortable, and the food barely enough. But Ikenna began to change. He started reading books, praying daily, and helping other inmates who couldn't read or write. Some called him pastor, others teacher. At night, he would sit by the small window and look at the stars, remembering the days of his freedom. He didn't dream of riches anymore. All he wanted was peace and forgiveness. Sometimes, he thought of Amara. He remembered her warning, "Quick money never lasts." Now, he understood every word. He wished he had listened earlier. Months later, his mother came to visit. Her hair had turned gray, and her body was thin, but her eyes still carried love. "My son," she said softly, "God gives everyone a second chance. Don't waste yours." He took her hands through the bars and said, "I won't, Mama. I promise." As she left, Ikenna watched her go until she disappeared from view. He sat quietly, letting her words sink deep into his heart. He had lost everything, his cars, his house, his friends, but in that small, lonely cell, he found something more valuable than wealth: repentance. For the first time in many years, Ikenna felt truly alive. He looked at the rising sun through the barred window and whispered, Maybe this is my new beginning. The day Ikenna stepped out of the prison gates, the air felt different. It was the same sun he had seen all his life, but that morning it looked brighter, softer, almost forgiving. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. The cold wind touched his face, and he whispered quietly, "Thank you, God." His clothes were old and plain, and his face looked thinner, but there was peace in his eyes. He carried only a small bag with a few things, a Bible, 2 notebooks, and a worn photo of his mother. The guards had returned it to him on his last day, saying, "You were one of the good ones, Ikenna." Outside the gate, Amara was waiting. She had written to him many times while he was inside, and her letters had given him strength when life felt unbearable. When she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. "Welcome home, Ikenna," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "It's good to be free again." They hugged, and for a while, neither spoke. The world felt new and strange to him. Cars honking, people rushing by, the smell of roasted corn in the distance. It was freedom, but it also reminded him of how much time he had lost. Amara took him home. His old house was gone, sold long ago, but his mother still lived in the small building he had built for her before everything collapsed. When Mama Adiz saw him, she cried loudly and fell to her knees. "My son is home. My Ikenna is back." He helped her up gently. "Mama, please don't cry. I'm home now. I'm not that same man anymore." She looked at him through tears. "You've suffered, my son, but I thank God you're alive. That's all that matters." For days, Ikenna stayed quietly at home, trying to adjust to life outside. The world had moved on, new phones, new slang, new faces. Sometimes he walked through town and saw people who once praised him now look away, embarrassed or unsure of what to say. Others whispered behind his back. He didn't mind. He had done wrong, and he understood that respect must be earned again. He spent his mornings helping his mother and his evenings reading. But one afternoon, Amara came to visit him with an idea. "Ikenna," she said, "you know more about computers than anyone I know. Why don't you teach young people how to use their skills in the right way?" He looked at her, surprised. "Teach? Who would even listen to me?" "Many will," she said with a smile. "They know your story. You can show them that even mistakes can lead to something good." Her words stayed in his heart. That night, he couldn't sleep. He thought about the younger boys he saw around town, jobless, restless, and easily tempted by the same lies he once believed. Maybe he could help them avoid the road that destroyed him. A week later, he took his small savings and rented a tiny shop near the main road. The place was dusty and old, with cracked walls and no computers, but it was a start. Amara helped him clean it up. Together, they painted the walls light blue and put up a simple sign that read, "Ikenna Digital Center, learn and earn honestly." At first, nobody came. People were unsure if he had truly changed. Some said he was pretending, others said he was too proud to beg. But Ikenna didn't give up. Every morning, he stood outside the shop, greeting passers-by with a smile. He spoke to students after school, telling them about free computer lessons. Slowly, a few curious youths began to show up. He started with just one old computer, a gift from Amara, and used his own laptop, which had been returned after his sentence. He taught them basic computer skills, typing, internet use, online business, and digital marketing. But more than that, he taught them about honesty, patience, and the dangers of greed. "Quick money burns fast," he told them. "But honest work builds something that lasts." The students listened. They had heard of his past. Some even called him Sir Ikenna. But what surprised them was how humble he had become. He laughed easily, spoke softly, and never looked down on anyone. When one student asked him, "Sir, don't you regret everything that happened?" he smiled and replied, "Regret is heavy, my boy. But I turned mine into purpose." Word spread quickly. Soon, more young people came to learn. Some brought their friends, others came from nearby towns. The small shop became full every day, and Ikenna added more chairs and computers. He began to receive donations from local businesses and even a few churches. The same community that once turned away from him now began to respect him again, not for his money, but for his wisdom. One day, a journalist came to interview him. "Mr. Ikenna," she said, How does it feel to go from being the wire lord to a teacher? He chuckled softly. It feels like waking up from a long sleep. I learned the hard way that true success is not what you own, it's what you build in others. His story spread across the region, inspiring many. Parents began sending their children to his center, and he was invited to speak at schools and youth events. Whenever he stood before a crowd, he told them the truth, how greed had blinded him, how he lost everything, and how grace gave him a second chance. His favorite words were simple: true success is built on truth. Amara was always by his side, helping him run the center. Over time, their friendship grew deeper. She had been there through his fall and his rise again. One evening, after a long day of teaching, they sat outside the shop watching the sunset. "Amara," he said softly, "I don't deserve all that you've done for me." She smiled. "You don't have to deserve forgiveness, Ikenna. You just have to live like you've learned from it." He looked at her, his eyes full of gratitude. "You helped me find my way again." "Maybe," she said, "but you chose to walk it." As the years passed, Ikenna's digital center grew. He opened branches in other towns, hiring former students as trainers. Some of them became successful freelancers, others started small businesses. Many came back to thank him, saying, "Sir, you changed my life." Every time he heard those words, his heart filled with peace. His mother, now older and weaker, often sat in front of the shop, watching the students come and go. "My son," she would say, "I told you God would give you another chance." "Yes, Mama," he would reply, smiling. "He gave me more than that. He gave me a purpose." One afternoon, as he stood in front of his students, he paused for a moment. He looked at their eager faces, the same kind of faces he once had when he dreamed of a better life. "You see," he said slowly, "money can disappear, but knowledge stays. Never trade your truth for gold." They clapped, and Ikenna felt a warmth inside him that money could never buy. That night, he walked home with Amara. The stars were bright, the streets quiet. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes, but not with pain anymore. I think about it as a story that had to be told. My mistakes became my message." Amara smiled. "And your message is saving lives." He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, God." In the years that followed, Ikenna became a symbol of change in his town. People didn't call him the wire lord anymore. They called him Teacher Ikenna. He still lived simply, still helped others, and still smiled the same calm smile that said, "I am free." Every morning before starting his classes, he would stand by the window, watching the sunrise, and say quietly, "True success is built on truth." And he lived those words every single day.